7 o'clock. I'd like to call the Budget Review Committee to order. It's May 16th, 2022. The meeting is being held in the Aldermatic Chamber and via Zoom, with meeting link can be found on the agenda on the city's website. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. If you're participating via Zoom, please state your presence, reason for not attending the meeting in person, and whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Please call the roll.
Alderman at Large Laurie Wilshire.
I am here.
Alderman John Sullivan.
Here.
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
I'm here, I'm alone in this room, and I'm participating via Zoom due to isolation because of COVID-19.
Alderman Ernest Jetty.
Here.
Alderman John Cathy.
Present.
Alderman at Large Michael B. O'Brien Sr. is present. And our chairman, Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Present. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum. Also in attendance, His Honor the Mayor James Donchis, Donna Graham, Legislative Affairs Manager, Steve Bolton of Corporate Counsel, Sue Lovering, the City Clerk, Tara Murphy, Emergency Management Coordinator, and Mr. Bill Mansfield, Radio Systems Manager, and Mr. John Griffin. Yes, oh yes, and Alderman Clee and Alderman Theobald are also here. I wrote you down, but I didn't say it.
Okay. Before we get started, this is the first of many budget reviews with the board, with the Budget Committee, and it's an opportunity to meet with the different division directors and to ask them questions relative to their budget. So, as I mentioned to the last full board meeting, everybody please review the section that we're going to be addressing before the evening arrives, so that you have any questions you might have relative to that part of the budget. We are also going to have public comment this evening, before and after the meeting. The one before should only address items that are being talked about this evening on the budget, the mayor's office, the board of aldermen, legal department, city clerk's office, emergency preparedness, and citywide communications. I might have missed legal, but all right. So communications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Communications from Len Fournier, Superintendent Woodlawn / Pinewood Cemeteries. The reason is fiscal year 23 budget narrative. Also, Mr. Chairman, we have further communications from the trustees of Edgewood Cemetery. The reason, fiscal year 23 budget narrative.
If there's no objection, I'll accept the communications and place them on file. The cemeteries have sent us their letters because we are not meeting with them. Their funding comes out of the interest earned on their trust accounts. And it's just telling us exactly what they do and what they spend their money on, but it's within the control of the trustees of the cemetery. Before we get into unfinished business, I'll open it up for public comment. Anyone that'd like to comment on anything related to this evening's agenda. Please state your name and address for the record.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I won't have time to go through all of these, but I'm going to start right away with the legal office. I'd like some real scrutiny done there. I don't think the right to know coordinator position should be in there any longer for almost $90,000. That did its stint. It cost us a lot of money because it created a lot of litigation that came right from the responses from that right to know coordinator. And it almost appeared as if no one in the legal office was supervising the position and the work that was coming out. I also have some real questions regarding the expenses. I don't see where there's any consultation fees in here if other attorneys are consulted. And also office supplies. I know what it costs for me to print and go in with books. My right to know lawsuit in December, supposedly the city had run off 50,000 pages of documents they wanted to present to court. making numerous copies. And I don't believe that that supply budget of $3,000 is accurate. That there must be money coming out of someplace else, because I understand litigation now, and I understand the paperwork involved. And that cannot be all-inclusive, and the same with litigation-related expenses. So I'd like to know if there's some other part of the budget where consultation with other law firms is being posted, and I'd like to get that position out of there for right-to-know coordinator. Back to the mayor's budget. I'd like to see a position cut from that budget. The services, it says, communicates and engages with the public. This mayor only communicates and engages with like-minded people who are similar to him. I want to see an office that engages all of us, and that's not happening. Creates a welcoming atmosphere within city government. This is not welcoming. You come into City Hall and there's locked doors with buttons and no doorbells and plaques up saying by appointment only. This is the only City Hall I've been in the state that's like that. You know what? It's okay. That's the way he wants his City Hall run. That's fine. I don't want to fund all the positions. Whoever the PR person is in there, and I don't understand all those strategic positions, I'd like you to ask, each one has a name, no job description. I could certainly write to know to get all of that. However, I'd like this board to ask, let's get rid of the PR person, because I don't think they're PRing the way they should. Board of Aldermen, not too many issues there, but I will say the transcriptionist is still in the budget for $44,000. We haven't had that position filled since September. Why are we still funding it? We're obviously not doing minutes the way we used to. We're abbreviating them. We're not
30
using
seconds.
outside services to do this, so I would like to see that $44,000 removed from the budget and trim it down. And just go with our legislative assistant, abbreviated minutes, and we're done. YouTube postings, and we're good. Thank you.
Anyone else, public comment?
Do you take Zoom meetings?
Yes,
Do you
Mr.
take
Pingle,
Zoom?
name and address for the record.
Do you take Zoom calls? I did not hear that.
Yes.
Okay, this is Fred T-Bone calling you from my home. And I'm glad you finally decided to have public comment during these budget hearings, as has been held for decades in the past. I don't know what made you think you should not have a public comment period, because there's no such definition as a special work session in our ordinances or anywhere else on the state law. Now, and I'll assume there'll be a public comment period in every one of your budget review meetings. And now, I haven't got time to review a lot of stuff in 3 minutes allocated, but I would like to say, if you look at the resolution R-22-035, which you are now discussing, under the analysis, which applies to every single discussion you're having on this budget, there's a statement that absolutely should not be there. Since the legal department is there, Mr. Bolton is there, he's got something in there that says that court decisions, or quote, court decisions concerning national charter suggest that the court may find its provision when applied to budget resolution itself inconsistent with state statute. What kind of business does that suggested statement have on analysis? That itself is completely faulty because it deals in the memorandum with the Supreme Court case, the Manchester case, which is obsolete and was upended by the state legislature. So that's just one of the many, many problems I have with this budget. The 3 minutes does not give me time to analyze, and I'll do so in the memorandum. The ridiculous calculation of page 4, it says that your appropriations are $113 million under the cap. What insanity came up with that conclusion? I'll analyze this further. There's somebody in the finance office that put this stuff together ought to get their head examined. And I know where this all started.
30 seconds.
I know where this all started. This all started with the legal office, with a Bolton proposed resolution that included grants. I'll get into it later. but this kind of stuff must stop. Thank you.
Anyone else, public comment? Seeing no one? And public comment. By the way, just like to mention that the reason we didn't originally have public comment is I was hoping these would be sessions, especially with the new alderman, to have more time with the division directors. But evidently our ordinances don't allow for any kind of that type of meeting, so at the current time, we will have public comment. But this is primarily time for the alderman, particularly the new alderman, to ask questions, to get familiar with the city budget, so they can analyze the budget and have comments and questions they'd like answered. So with that, unfinished business,
There is none.
new business resolutions.
Before us this evening is R-22-035, relative to the adoption of the fiscal year 2023 proposed budget for the city of Nashua, general, enterprise, special revenue, and grant funds. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to open up discussion on R-22-035.
Okay. So the motion before us is the city budget, which is R-22-035. And we will leave that open and we will talk to it this evening on the portions that are mentioned in the agenda. After we're done talking citywide communications, we're going to entertain a motion to table R-22-035 until our next budget meeting. With that, I'd like to call the mayor up. And Mr. Griffin. The mayor is going to give us an overview, thoughts on the budget, and Mr. Griffin will be here to guide us through the entire process.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First, I would like to, of course, welcome our new alderman to the budget process. It is, as an alderman, I always found it very interesting and very educational, seeing all the department heads come before you and answer various questions. I would like to thank the budget team that has worked very hard on this over a period of months. Those people include John Griffin, of course, he's here, CFO and City Treasurer, as well as Kim Kleiner, Administrative Services Director, Megan Karen, who is in the mayor's office, and Cheryl Lindner. You might, regarding presentation, you will see that regarding each of the departments and divisions, there are explanations of what their basic duties are and what their responsibilities are and what they've accomplished over a period, over the recent months and last year. Now, this is something we have worked to improve. Megan Karen especially is working on this, and we can continue to improve this. A few years ago, there was no explanation whatsoever, just numbers. And I found, just looking at it, that it's very hard to get into the budget if you're not working with it all the time. So we are trying to make it more accessible and more friendly to people who, from the outside, who aren't meeting every night and working, getting into the deep details regarding the budget. So what I will do tonight, Mr. Chair, is talk about some of the overview issues of the budget, and usually then I answer any questions. I'll be here for the mayor's office, and then really I leave it to the budget committee to work with all the departments that'll come before you tonight and in the succeeding weeks. This year, we are affected by various inflation in various aspects of the budget. As you've seen, the price of fuel is way up, and that cuts across many departments. The cost of natural gas is up. The cost of materials, the cost of construction. There are many areas that have been affected or are being affected by inflation. One area where we are seeing inflation, but we've been able to offset it to a great degree, at least in the short term, is the area of healthcare. That's an area where healthcare costs are going up for employers in general at a fairly rapid rate. But as we've discussed before, the Administrative Services Division developed a reformed HMO plan, which has many advantages for city employees and certainly for the city. And that has been agreed to now by a whole number of employee groups, including contracts, large groups, contracts you have recently approved, teachers, police officers. And as a result, the rate of increase has been greatly moderated in the healthcare area, and we think in the coming year we will, in years ahead, we will be saving as much as $3.5 to $4 million a year as a result of those changes. We've tried not to add additional positions, although there are some that seemed necessary. Before I get into that, we will be looking during the course of the year if it's possible to eliminate positions through attrition, which we think will be possible during the course of the year. Additional positions, there are 2 in the police department proposed by the department. One is a prosecutor. They're being greatly challenged by the number of cases that are pending and the speed with which those are being handled by the courts. Number 2, there is a person to handle the body cameras on a full-time basis. The body cameras are something we added last year. Then Deputy Rourke and I worked to put that in the budget, and the body cameras were incorporated in police operations this fiscal year. They've proven to be very successful. They, of course, help understand what happens in any interaction between the police department and a member of the public. And the police department reports to me that in some occasions it has caused a person that they're encountering who's excited to calm down because they realize they are on camera. So the department considers that a major success, but they need someone to handle all of the tapes. It's all on, they're not tapes, it's the recordings that are on the web, and they need to catalog these and just handle the whole process. So you will see that in the police department budget, I added, last year the body cameras, $350,000, were funded in the capital improvements budget. This year I just switched it over to the police department budget. This year's cost is $290,000. So I added to their budget $240,000. Now I asked them if they could handle a $50,000 cut, and I think they'll tell you that that's manageable. Another area where we propose adding an employee is in the area of right to know, a right to know paralegal for the Administrative Services Division. The reason for this is that over the last several years, we have received at least 1,200 right to know requests. Those come more than one a day. Sometimes they can be answered quickly. Other times they are hours or days to respond to those requests. And what we're finding is that a number of employees are spending quarter of their time, half their time just on right to know requests. It's burning people out. We've had people leave because of it. And people work here for the city. Sometimes they receive pay that is not equivalent to what they might get in the private sector. But they work here because they want to serve the citizens of Nashua, say as a chief assessor or some other job. And they don't want to spend half their time answering right-to-know requests. And when they encounter that, they tend to look for another job. And so what this will do is it will help us give some relief to those who are spending as much time on these 1,200 right-to-know requests as they are spending. And hopefully we can retain people in positions where they can serve the city and still enjoy the job and focus on the responsibilities that they feel are important. Beyond that, I made a few cuts. I reduced the school department by $100,000. I believe they can clearly handle that. The fire department by $100,000. I have spoken with Chief Buxton about it. I'm not sure what his reaction will be after he's had a chance to review it. But one thing that I've tried to accomplish over the last number of years is I've tried to articulate the message that it is a budget problem when any department, no matter how important they are, and certainly the fire department is one of our most important departments, but no matter how important they are, if the budget goes up double the cost of living year after year after year, that is, I don't think sustainable. So hopefully, over time, we can work on that issue. Before I complete, I wanted to mention the City Hall, overall City Hall. Last year, we were faced with some very significant budget challenges at the beginning of the year, at least threatened budget challenges. Some of them came to pass. And at first, we were looking at $11 million hit from the state of New Hampshire. So in City Hall, in order to save money and to set an example for everyone, we cut two significant positions, we cut 3 positions, and we reduced the budget for all of the City Hall departments together, including everything in this building, public health. We cut the budget for those departments by 3%, or 2.9, something like that. And so people really, and Public Works was 1%. Now those numbers are before the cost of pensions. Those are independent of the cost of pensions because last year pension expense over which we have no control, it's a state mandated, state controlled system. The pension costs went up $4.4 million with not having anything to do with any increase in city wages. So it's in terms of trying to decide how the departments are performing in a budget context, you need to pull out the pension costs because otherwise everything looks like it's going up a lot, but the local departments, Board of Aldermen, the mayor have no control over that. So when you take out those costs, you will see, we presented it last year that City Hall went down, was cut 3%. Thank you to all the people who made those significant sacrifices to do that. And this year, it may be up a little bit, but overall, it's not much higher than it was 2 years ago. So we're trying to save money as we go along, despite significant challenges that we're facing otherwise. With that, I will just comment briefly on the mayor's budget. It's up a bit, but again, in the context of City Hall, it's part of the entire City Hall budget, which over a couple of years we've been able to hold almost constant. And I'm here, Mr. Chair, to answer any questions about the budget as a whole or regarding anything that I've discussed.
So before I open up, I just want to reiterate something I said before, but Mr. Griffin, if you would just reiterate as well. Fridge benefits, you'll find them in each one of the departments. But the departments don't have any control over those numbers. Those are all given to them. Fringe benefits are based upon salaries and other things. Mr. Griffin, would you like to expand on that explanation?
Certainly, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, John Griffin, CFO, Treasurer, Tax Collector. We ended up several years ago putting what we call benefits and pension costs, FICA Medi costs in the budgets because we thought it was good for the reader to see that the departments weren't just salaries, wages, and no benefits. What's interesting, as the mayor indicated, is the pensions, especially New Hampshire retirement system, that's been a struggle since I've been here, 2010. What's interesting is the benefits, and we'll get into more detail when Director Kleiner comes here before you, but the benefits, we've really done a nice job mitigating the significant increases that every corporation in America and every public corporation in America, every school district in America is facing. And you'll see that benefit when we go through the entire budget. But just in summary, the employees, once they're hired, and that's a challenge in and of itself, that we can't not offer them benefits, we can't not pay their pension, the city's portion, or the FICA Medi to the Internal Revenue Service. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to explain that.
Are there any questions for the mayor concerning the mayor's office budget or the budget in general?
Mr. Chair, could I make one more general
Sure.
comment? I mean, one thing that people should understand that we are facing when it comes to the tax rate, which has to be a bottom line consideration for all of us, is that this revaluation is going to make property taxes for homeowners go up. And the reason for that is that the homes have gone up so much in value over the last 3, 4, 5 years, 30, 40, 50%. And a revaluation in terms of what it does, and this is state mandated, this is required by the state of New Hampshire, we're under order to complete this. What it does is it brings all assessments to fair market value for all properties, including commercial properties, including homes, everything. Now, what it does not in and of itself collect more taxes, but can reallocate the tax burden if one segment of the market has gone up more than another segment. So right now, homes represent about 2/3 of the tax base, which currently is about $10 billion. That number will certainly go up. Commercial properties are about 1/3 of the total tax base. But, as I mentioned, residential values have gone up very significantly. Commercial properties, much less so or not at all. And the final results, we don't have yet, but it's obvious that commercial properties are not going up in the same fashion. So what will happen is instead of 2/3 of the tax burden, homes will bear something more than 2/3, 69, 70, 71% of the overall tax burden. And the tax rate will, these values will go up, the tax rate will come down, but it won't, the tax rate will drop, but it will not offset the effect of the homes going up so much and the commercial properties not doing so. Some commercial property owners are arguing that their values went down, and they filed a number of abatement requests, which we are, the legal office and others are contesting. But that is going to have a negative effect, and therefore, Mr. Chair, unfortunately, the state mandated revaluation is going to affect our homeowners.
Alderman Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions. Since you just mentioned it, I did have that on my list. I didn't know if the market seems obviously inflated right now because of COVID, and by all indications that those numbers will start to come down. Does the reevaluation process take into consideration those things, or is it just whenever the houses are reevaluated and assessed, that's the hard line number, regardless of where the market goes right after that? So if next year the houses come down, 5%, those houses are sort of locked into that rate as far as their assessment goes. Does that come into play at all?
So this is done pursuant to state law, and not only does the state law dictate how the revaluation should play out, but the Department of Revenue Administration oversees and needs to approve the results of the revaluation. Now, what state law says is that values are fixed as of April 1st. So what this revaluation is doing is telling us what fair market values are as of April 1, 2022. And that cannot change until there's another revaluation.
Okay.
Now, this is a full measure, and this is state law. As an aside, anybody, of course, who believes that their assessment in the context of the overall market is too high has the right will have a right to meet with Vision, the assessing firm, and can always appeal their assessment. But we do not have the legal option of reducing some values in the absence of an entire revaluation. So, were that to come to pass, were residential homes to decline, which I'm not sure that is inevitable, but were that to happen, maybe it would make sense to do another revaluation. Now, this is a full measure and list, meaning first time since 1991, which means that there are appraisers, assessors who offer to go into all the properties and physically have visited commercial properties. You can do a more typical, statistical revaluation, which is much cheaper and quicker than full measure and list. So, I'm not so sure that experts would suggest that residential, they might level off, but coming down, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of demand pressure. So if that were to happen, though, we could consider, a revaluation more quickly than would otherwise be required, which is 5 years from now.
Follow-up?
Follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned new positions. Do you know exactly how many new positions total that you were discussing about being added?
There is a mason in the Public Works, so I believe we're talking 2 people in the police department, a mason in Public Works. Now remember, Public Works cut their budget last year, and the right-to-know person that I mentioned.
Okay. Can I get one more?
Follow-up?
Thank you. This is actually for Mr. Griffin. At some point, it doesn't have to be tonight, could you send us how the benefits work, how that number is determined, or how you get those numbers delivered to you, just so we as aldermen have an understanding of where that's coming from? I know you can't change it, but I would like to have a deeper understanding of the benefits and that process.
Mr. Griffin?
Mr. Chairman, the best person to answer that particular question would be Director Kleiner.
Okay.
She works very closely with our expert consultant in that matter and has a very high-level grasp of the impacts of the rate, the employer rate creation, the impacts on the employees and employer.
Perhaps if you'll hold that question until she comes before us.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, and Alderman Sullivan, and by the way, the process we're gonna follow is I'm gonna call on budget people first until they've asked all their questions of somebody, then I'll take non-budget members. Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 3 questions for the mayor.
Mm-hmm.
All in, generally speaking with the budget, what is the proposed budget, the total amount, all in?
It is a 300 and, John will give you the exact number. 15?
I can help,
Yes,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Griffin.
So the general fund, as articulated on the resolution, $302,998,903 for the general fund. The enterprise funds, $44,082,794. And the special revenue funds to include special revenue funds, grants, and the TIFs is $36,607,613. So the total proposed budget is $406,663,584.
Thank you. My follow-up question is, before we vote on the budget, now, I don't, Mayor Donchis, I don't know if this question is for you or for you, Mr. Chairman, but before we vote on the budget, will this committee know how the allocation will be done as we head into this year? So Mayor Donchis mentioned right now it's 66-33 in favor of residential to commercial. Will we know what that allocation is before we vote on this?
Probably
budget?
not, because the values are going to come out after July 1. And then there will be board meetings, and the people will, will be able to discuss with Vision their values if they think they're too high. And then the values, the assessments will come out late summer, early fall. So the answer is the answer is really no. That's not going to be clear by July 1.
Follow-up?
Thank you. Last question.
Yeah.
Is there any way that we can accelerate that? My only concern is the, for lack of a better term, Christmas present Nashville residents may get at a very difficult time at the end of a very difficult year where everything has been pointing up. And that's my question. Is there any way to accelerate it?
Well, I think we can get Ms. Kleiner and to answer it more completely, but the real answer is going to be no. It's going to be very difficult. I mean, it's a big process. There's a lot, 29,000 properties. There's not going to be a definitive answer by June 30 or July 1 when the next fiscal year begins. But I suggest you ask that of Ms. Kleiner, and she can give you a more depth.
Attorney Bolton?
Thank you.
The real problem is, even the question that was asked, that's not enough information to let anyone know how it will affect an individual's tax bill that they would get in December. The reason for that is it's not anyone local, it's not anyone that the city hires, it's not Vision, it's the State Department of Revenue Administration that determines the tax rate. And they won't determine that until sometime in October. And then that will be plugged in to the computer, which generates the tax bills, and the tax bills will be mailed out somewhere in early to mid-November, due for payment 30 days later. So knowing that there's been a shift in the percentage of property that is classified as residential from 67% to 70% is really not enough information to let you know or even estimate what any particular property will have their tax bill fluctuate.
Now, when I said 70%, that's just throwing out a hypothetical figure.
I understand.
But I should make clear, even, a house that's gone up 50%, that does not mean that their taxes are going to go up 50%, because the tax rate will definitely fall. I mean, as we've already talked about, I mean, this doesn't do people who intend to stay in their homes their whole life, you know, any good. But I mean, people have a lot more equity than they had before because the houses are worth so much. But in terms of trying to survive day to day, as you've, or, you know, over the next 6 months or the next year or 3 years or whatever, you know, it doesn't help in the daily life. You know, you got more paper value, but the tax rate is what is most important in terms of trying to pay the bills.
Thank you.
All set, Alderman Sullivan?
Yep.
Alderman Kathy?
This may sound like a very naive and dumb question, but if the state determines the tax rate for the citizens, we don't know what their tax bills are going to be until that comes out, that number comes out. So we don't know how much revenue we're getting from the property tax. So how then do we determine a budget without knowing the total number of revenue that we will receive from property taxes?
Well, the budget includes all of the appropriations that are proposed, and you ultimately will decide that ultimate number. And it includes non-property tax revenue estimates. And those will be used as a component of the tax rate calculation. To make up the gap between the appropriation and the non-property tax revenues, the tax rate will be set to exactly bring in the amount of dollars necessary to pay for the budget over and above the non-tax revenues. Now, once this revaluation is settled, and again, that's not going to be, you know, tomorrow at all, but once that's settled, I mean, Mr. Griffin will be able to estimate the tax rate. I mean, the state sets it, but, you know, he's very good at estimating what it's going to be. So once these numbers are set, then he will be able to estimate what the tax rate will be. But again, that will not be by July 1.
Thank you.
All set? Alderman Jettie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mayor, you know, this may, you know, sound, you know, completely surprising, but, you know, I appreciate your wanting to keep the tax rate down. But, doing the job of government, providing the services that, you know, that we want in Nashua, and we want Nashua to be a first-class city, you know, that costs a certain amount of money. And I hear you talking about, you know, reducing the school budget by $100,000. You know, I didn't hear you say how that you expect them to do that. But we just, you know, passed, you know, several teachers' union contracts, you know, which you and I were in favor of, which, you know, increased. I mean, you know, all of our departments, I think it's true that all of our departments, you know, the main part of their budgets are personnel, you know, salaries and benefits and all of that. So, you know, I see us raising, you know, I can't remember the numbers exactly, but I see, you know, various, you know, groups in the city, you know, getting increases for the next 3 or so years of, you know, like, you know, an average of, you know, 4%, you know, some years it's 6% for some of them. And then you tell us you're gonna, you know, reduce their overall budget by $100,000, and you're gonna reduce City Hall's budget by 3%, you're gonna cut positions, you know, BPW down 1%. You know, as an alderman, you know, when people call me and they complain about different things, and I call, you know, on their behalf, I call a department and they say, you know, we don't have the staff. You know, you call code enforcement, you know, how many code enforcement officers do we have? 2, 3? And we're expecting them to do, you know, a lot of work, and they say, we just don't have the staff. And then, you know, I hear you say, well, we're gonna cut. So, you know, I know it's just a general overview here, but, you know, I'm having trouble processing how we increase wages and how we, you know, we cut overall budgets when wages are the bulk of the budgets.
All right, now, just to be clear, the 3% cut in City Hall was in the current budget, the one that's in, you know, the one that we're doing now from the year before. So that's in fiscal '22 compared with fiscal '21, the same with Public Works. This year, City Hall is up, but similar, up from, but not much from 2 years ago. But certainly I agree with you completely that the quality of services is very important to the life of the city and the future success of the city, no question about it. The teacher's contract was very important, and we did support it, and thank God, you know, thank you to the alderman for approving it and to those who negotiated it. But remember, the school budget is significantly more than $100 million. So I just remember, how did I get to 100,000? I remember Dan Donovan, the person in charge of finances at the school department, said last year, if I can't handle a $100,000 cut, I shouldn't be in this job. So I don't think, you know, it's, you know, 1% of the school budget is well more than $1 million. 100,000 is, yes, a lot of money, but is a percentage of the school budget is a small number. But, you know, if we put a few cuts here, a few cuts there, you know, we try to keep things down as much as we can. I think we can still deliver the quality services, the quality schools that you're saying, and I agree, are important, while at the same time, you know, saving as much as we can.
All set, Alderman Jenny?
Yes, I look forward to hearing more detail about it. Thank you.
Just one quick note, having been chair of budget for the Board of Ed for a few years, it's a complex equation with a whole lot of moving parts. And this year, they have some of the positions to help students get reacclimated to education that are being paid for out of ESSER funds. I'm not going to get into that tonight. It's in your book on the school budget. It tells you what ESSER funds are. And when they come in, you can talk to it. So they're in a better position than they normally are because of that. And they'll explain it when they come in.
But Alderman Jettie, I might not have been totally clear. And when I say I cut the budget, the budget is not lower than the year before. I cut their request by $100,000. Right. So the school budget is still up. It's significant, you know, enough to pay for the teacher's contract and to pay for excellent schools. But their request, I cut their request to $100,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Tebow, you had a question?
I'm going to let you do your thing.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to be clear, when we talk about the tax rate and the taxes that our citizens are paying, it includes beyond the city's tax rate, correct? It includes the county, the state takes their little share of it as well. And that is on the tax bill, correct? Because I know the county's going up this year.
Correct, but the state takes more than a little share.
Yeah, I know.
So
I was being sarcastic.
we're paying $35 million for pensions. You know, we've gone over and over that, you know, year after year, but you know, that used to be $8 million not that long ago. The city budget for pensions was $8 million, you know, more than, you know, a dozen years ago approximately. Maybe a little more than that, but now it's 4 times what it was then and more. And so that has been, I think, the single most, caused the single most pressure on local property taxes and on city budgets, that escalation from a relatively small amount of the budget to now, you know, more than 10% of the entire thing, John just told you that, but the general fund budget is 302 million. Well, 35 million or so goes to the state. We also send, what is it, the amount to, how much are we sending to the county? It's 20-some million dollars.
About 20 million.
20 million to the county. Because the county budget is paid for out of property taxes. So everything is on the property tax, and that is why property taxes are so high. Limited state aid, less than in most states, or all states. Pension bills that are going up, we pay for the county. The county budget is allocated according to tax base, so Manchester and Nashua pay equal, I believe about 25% of the county budget each, and then the rest is distributed among the towns. So yeah, I mean, there's a big bite out of it.
And
Follow up, Alderman Glee?
thank you, and I say this for the public that's listening. The county budget is going up, and I'm not poo-pooing that, because if we think bad things have happened in the city because we don't put funds towards it, I can tell you that the same is happening in a lot of the county areas too. Buildings, even the county building that they have, they can't use an entire wing of it because it's technically almost condemned. So, but I can tell you their tax rate is going to go up this year, which will have an effect on us. I don't know the rate yet. They're still working on their budget, but for everything we're hearing, it's going up based on the commissioner. So perhaps Commissioner Susi can address that. But based on the commissioner's budget, it is going up.
But again, back to Alderman Jettie, when I've said I've cut these budgets, I mean they've cut, police department 50, fire department 100, police, or school, I'm cutting their requests. They've all asked for an increase, and I have simply reduced the increase by those amounts, not a lower budget than they had last year.
Any other questions for the mayor? Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a process on how we go through this. Do we, since we're going over the general government fund tonight, is this the time to ask questions, or explain, please, how we're going to proceed tonight?
Right now, we're discussing the mayor's office and City Hall. I don't believe the mayor's going to be here for one of our budget sessions, so if you have something that you feel only he can answer, now would be the time to ask it. But not that affects any other divisions, they will be in on their own.
Okay. So my question goes to, I was looking at full-time employees year over year. I saw that the total head count in your office was the same. Is it basically the same people? Is it overall nothing has changed in your office? Any changes between year over year?
Well, some of the people have changed. Cheryl Lindner started working in the finance department. So we got someone else. But the number of positions has, stayed the same, as you said.
Okay.
And it's been constant for some period of time. On the process, Steve is here to talk about the legal department, Steve Bolton, Sue Lovering to talk about the city clerk and answer any detailed questions about that. I will come, I'm not going to be like in your face every day, every meeting trying to, argue with you over this or that. But I will come back at the end so that once you have more insight into what's proposed, you might have questions for me, or maybe it's worth discussing something at the time. Maybe there are things that you want to ask me about, or that we could discuss changing, or whatever. I will come back at the end. You usually have budget review sessions where once you've seen all the departments, they You know, you get together and you talk about the overall picture and whether, you know, whether you want to amend it in some way. Anyway, I will come back for that, and then you will, in the end, you know, have to vote on the budget.
Okay.
So just to reiterate, some time ago, I put out how the budget process works. We will have these meetings with the division heads and discuss with them. And then at the end of that, we are going to have a public hearing on the budget where public can come out and ask questions directly to the division heads, who will all be there. And then after that, then we have wrap-up sessions. That's when we would entertain motions to either take from or add to any part of the budget. So when we do that, we change the mayor's budget. Well, we have two options, I guess. We can just say we're happy with the mayor's budget and pass it and send it on to the full Board of Aldermen. Or we can modify it and send the modified version of the budget to the Board of Aldermen. And then there's a whole process that I had outlined in that sheet. I hope everybody still has it. But if you don't, we can get one to you.
I need that at the top of my inbox.
Yes.
So I do have some questions.
Sure, all of it.
Is this the appropriate time to ask about the deltas in Board of Aldermen plus 18.6%, legal plus 6.4%, city clerk plus 7.8%, and parking plus 11%?
Well, not parking, but the others, the different people are gonna come out from the Board of Aldermen. Donna will come up and work with Lori, and then legal department, and then the city clerks, will get a chance to address each one of them separately.
Okay.
Any other questions for the mayor?
In response to the question about the people, I mean, the people there work hard in the mayor's office. I mean, they answer a lot of constituent complaints. We follow the legislature, all the bills. We work on the budget. The improvements in presentation, which I believe we will, I mean, those aren't finished. We may be able to make headway on that between now and when the final budget is published in terms of the explanations, and we're trying to make the budget more accessible to, again, as you know, a person who is not going to attend every budget committee meeting, you know. Megan Karen does that. We have some software that we think can improve the presentation further. So the people we communicate with the public. We don't have as much of a news media as we used to. So the people there work hard.
Just one other thing on salaries. If people are non-affiliated, there's a non-affiliated schedule and they move up a step. So if there's an increase in somebody's salaries because they moved up a step in the unaffiliated. If you're looking at individual salaries in the other divisions that are in part of a union, then they have increases based upon the union contract.
Mm-hmm.
So we have no control whatsoever over anybody's individual salary.
Okay.
Okay?
Can I ask a question about a salary?
Sure.
Chief of Staff, so this is just an example. In the 22 budget, you had a chief of staff at 98,000. This year, according to the budget book, it's vacant, but you're budgeted at 71, so you're looking to hire one.
Well,
It'll
we
be
really
less.
have, we have someone sort of serving in that capacity, but, you know, we've readjusted the allocation of the salaries, and therefore the headcount is not going up, and the total salaries are going up a little bit, but, you know, the total number, but not a lot.
Yeah, I just saw that as a big delta,
Yes.
and then I put two and two together, so thank you.
Did you want to pay them more? Is that what you-
No, I just didn't know if the chief
Yeah.
of staff knew
They
that they were
deserve it.
getting a large pay cut. But now I see
Cheryl,
why.
Cheryl Lindner was the chief of staff, and she went to work in finance.
Okay,
So that's what happened.
very good.
And didn't take a pay cut. Okay, if we're done with the mayor's office, we'll go to the Board of Aldermen. Donna hiding behind the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if members of the committee have questions in the interim, you can always contact me, no problem.
Thank you.
Yes.
And before you get to the end.
One other thing, if you ask anybody, if you got a question relative to the budget, and hypothetically you ask Mr. Griffin for something, a copy of that should go to Donna, and Donna will give it to everybody on the board, so that no one has certain information that the rest of the board doesn't have, okay? So, Donna?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to present my FY23 budget for Department 102, the Board of Aldermen, which President Wilshire and I worked on. I do have an increase, and I have a request that my part-time position be converted into a full-time position. The part-time was 20 hours a week, and right now I do have a job share with the woman downstairs in motor vehicles that she's helping me do some of the transcription, but it's not full-time, it's whenever she can get to it. The other line item that I have an increase in is 55699, other contracted services. We went from $200 to $2,000, and the reason for the increase is because every 2 years when we have the new Board of Aldermen, I have expenses, the photographs, the individual photographs, the nameplates, the name tags, and everything that will truly represent what it is that we spend every other year. And that's all that I have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. You mentioned the part-time, and you and I had extensive conversations about this. We lost a part-time person and everything else, but the part-time person did a lot of dictation. And I think the alderman here got to realize, could you give us a ratio of 1 hour meeting equals how many?
It's 4 hours of transcription.
4 hours of dictation.
Correct.
1 hour of meetings equals 4 hours of, so that's time consuming.
That is correct. I do have a software program that helps me do some of the transcription, but I can't just put it out there and because it's not adequate to put out there for just to cut and paste and put it into the minutes. So it does cut down some of my time, but it still takes time to, go through it and cut and paste.
Follow up, and what you mean by that is you actually transcribe verbatim.
Correct.
Not what the computer suggests, which could, as computers, we all dealt with our phones, or Microsoft, my other good friends over there, of how many times each and every single one of us says, oh, darn spell check, you know what I mean?
Right.
And exactly what it means. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Alderman Kathy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is more of a clarifying question. As Alderman Sullivan mentioned earlier, there is an increase of 18.775 in your department, but from what I can see, that is mainly due to A, that full-time position, and B, the increase in benefits, which is almost double. Is that the two main reasons why it's up so high?
That is correct.
Okay. I have a follow-up on that.
Follow up?
Could you just briefly describe what the difference between the transcription specialists and the stenographic services are? Like, is there a difference, or is that just sort of like to fill in when we need it?
That is correct. So back in the day, before I came to the city of Nashua, I actually was City Clerk Sue Levering's stenographic person for the overflow that they couldn't get to during budget season.
Okay.
So, and unfortunately, I haven't had any takers on having to help me transcribe, so I haven't used that line item. So that'll just go back into the general fund.
Okay.
And I have not had my part-timer left in August, and some of my budget is being used for the part-timer for my part-time person downstairs.
Great.
Alderman Wilshire, did you want to add anything?
Yes, it's been difficult to find someone to do the part-time job. I mean, the job was posted and it's really been tough to find somebody. The other thing is when Donna's not here, I mean, she can't take time off because everything has to still get done. The city still has to do their business. So it's been difficult not having another person in there. And the job would probably be more attractive as a full-time position because a person would have benefits and they would be able to, fill in where needed and do the transcription, so.
Right.
Yeah, and just another thing, we've had occasional inquiries as to why the minutes weren't out or the minutes were late. And it's because there aren't enough hours in the day for Donna to do everything and do all the transcriptions. Now, I'm not gonna weigh in on my thoughts on this, but with the fact that we record our meetings today, both on a recorder plus on TV, does it still make sense to do verbatim minutes? Hard copy. So, think about that.
Alderman Dowd?
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I've been quietly listening. A lot of people have covered my questions, but my question was around what you just asked. I wanted to know, I don't know, is legal counsel here? I was just wondering what, to the letter of the law, do we have to provide in terms of transcriptions? And whether or not the abbreviated is okay, or if we really are required to have full minutes for each meeting.
Attorney Bolton.
The right to know law only requires that, it's the members of the body in attendance, anyone else who addresses the body, and a description of the subject matter discussed and any votes taken, decisions made. So that's substantially less than getting it word for word.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank Donna for all of the hard work she does, putting up with us and corralling us to get here. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
You're welcome.
As far as the verbatim minutes, I realize that they're not required, but I do have a number of constituents that are elderly and have a hard time hearing and listening to the meetings. They're not closed caption, they're just, so they always relied on the verbatim to understand the meeting. They understand that it's just not possible to do it right now. And I agree with what Alderman Wilshire had said. A full-time job is going to be a lot more attractive than a part-time job. So I agree that we should consider pushing that up to a full-time position. And it would allow Donna to take time off and not have to work from home or on weekends. And trust me, we all know you send Donna a message and you get a response on the weekend. So I know she's working almost 7 days a week, so thank you.
Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, so I don't, I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but in my business, we deal with, verbatim transcriptions quite a bit. And, there are companies that do this. You send them the tape and, they have people that work for them, usually from home, who transcribe these things, and you get the result, mailed to you. Have you looked into that? Is that a possibility? If you're having trouble finding, people?
I have not, because we wouldn't have the money in our budget to fund it at this point.
Well, do you know what the cost? Have you?
I don't.
Okay.
Any other questions for Donna? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the legal department, 103. The appropriations, by the way, are on page 54.
They're on page, it's on page 54. As has been stated before, the year on top of year difference is almost exclusively due to increases in salary and wages and increases in fringe benefits. I have no say in all of that. These numbers are filled in, and I do not have access to change them. So my understanding is that there is a schedule in the unaffiliated employee policy that explains how the grid will be adjusted over year after year with some index to inflation. And then benefits are calculated because of the insurance that individual employees select, the health insurance, working rates, and that's calculated, and the pension expense, and the Social Security and Medicare, that's the city's share of that, is a strict percentage of the salaries. So after you take out all of that, which adds up to about $850,000, last year the budget for various things like telephone and dues and membership, mileage reimbursement, training, postage, office supplies, publication. Last year that totaled, all of those things I just mentioned totaled $19,000. Couple lines were overrun, so we adjusted those up slightly. And so this year, on top of the salaries and benefits, it's gone from $19,000 to $20,150. So a total of $1,150 differential.
Questions for Attorney Bolton? Yes, Alderman Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Mayor Donches mentioned earlier, we've had quite a few lawsuits. Are those covered under the legal department's budget, or is that something different because they're lawsuits?
I don't know what you mean by covered. We primarily are the ones responsible for trying those cases. We don't charge any extra for doing that.
So that's just part of your day-to-day, so there's no extra expenses that come out of having to deal with multiple lawsuits. Is that correct?
Well, one of the things that we do a lot of, for example, is tax abatement cases. Now, in many of those cases, we'll hire an appraiser to testify on our behalf, or in fact, render opinions to us that assist us in the settlement mediation process. And sometimes we are able to settle those in a beneficial way, and it's the Board of Assessors that ultimately determines that. Those expenditures come out of the overlay budget. So you don't see that in here. So, yeah, I mean, there's litigation. That's one of the primary things we do, but it doesn't necessarily impact what you see out of this budget. So, for example, another example would be Public Works hires a company to lay some sewer or drainage lines. That contract, they run into more ledge than they expected. The contract ends up running over. There's litigation over whether that was should have been anticipated in the bid, or was it an unknown and unknowable condition, which entitles the contractor to additional compensation. We might litigate that. If the contractor ultimately prevails, either by way of settlement or by way of a judgment, that would be paid for out of the Public Works budget, probably out of the capital budget for that project, which presumably would have a contingency amount in it. So there are other examples of things that we're involved in that could result in expenditures that would not show up in our budget.
Thank you.
Other questions? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney Bolton, you mentioned that you don't have influence over the amount that you pay the folks, and that they're part of an unaffiliated
We are all unaffiliated. That means that we are non-union employees.
Correct. So when, can you expand on that a little bit more? Does that mean when I accept a job in your department, that under that agreement, I get increases every year? Is that what that means?
Well, for the first about 6 years, you would go up a step due to experience. So it's like sort of a grid pattern and you move along the grid. The entire table gets adjusted by inflation each year. Now that's nothing I invented, control. I barely understand it as regards my own pay. But once I determined who I'm going to hire into a particular position, everything else happens without any input from me if the person is performing up to the expected standard. And I will tell you, everyone is in the legal department. They're performing beyond minimum expectations. So I could prevent someone from getting a raise if I had a good reason to. I have no reason in case of any of the employees there.
Okay.
Follow up?
In your department, you have a right-to-know coordinator. Going back to when Mayor Donchis presented his department, he talked about a right-to-know, I don't remember what it was, an attorney that was under the administrative service. I'm sorry? Paralegal. Thank you.
I know nothing about that.
I just didn't know if you knew what the difference was.
Well, the attorney right-to-know coordinator in the legal department is a licensed New Hampshire lawyer. What they intend to hire in the administrative services department, apparently it's listed as paralegal. I've not been consulted on that, and in fact, tonight was the first I heard about it. Now, I have 2 legal assistants that are probably in other places would be called paralegals in my office, and they've both been there for a number of years.
Right.
All
Okay.
set?
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Attorney Bolton. Okay, next on the agenda is City Clerk's office. Ms. Lovering. How are you this evening?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just fine, how are you?
Good.
So just,
Just before you get started, she's one of the few people, the only person we're talking to tonight that has revenues. So the revenues are on page 29 and the appropriations are on page 57. All set.
so I'll begin with just the revenues. The estimated revenues for fiscal year '23 are based on a normal fiscal year. So fiscal year 2019 was used as a base for those estimations. I think what you will notice with an uptick, you will see significantly in the marriage licenses, and I believe that is for a few reasons, and many is due to the pandemic, and a lot of venues being canceled and marriages being postponed. And so I think that people are rebooking and celebrating marriages. And we also hear from a lot of people that a pandemic and other life events make you pause and reflect. And a lot of people have chosen to form a union. The other one is our dog licenses. I believe you will see that we are up on our revenue as that as well. During the pandemic, again, veterinarians, a lot of them were closed, and many felt that the vaccinations and the rabies were not considered essential. And so they were closed, and a lot of these folks did not have their rabies updated and do not license their dog. We were successful in migrating over our database of over 10,000 into a new software, and we have worked hard to reach out to those people and have licensed over 9,000 for this fiscal year. Turning to the budget, which is, I think, on page 57. Thank you. You will notice that few increases, which are the result of having 2 elections this year. This current fiscal year, last November, we had a non-mayoral municipal election, and in fiscal year 2023, we will have 2 state elections, the state primary and then the state general in November. So those will fluctuate it. Over time, about 2,500 for those 2 additional elections. And the wages for election officials for going to 2 elections. And the election services, which primarily is due to having police detail comes out of that. So we'll have police detail, which is over just about $10,000 we pay for each election. And then you'll see a slight decrease in our other contracted services, line item 55699, and that's because we don't have an inauguration this year, so we reduced that amount. This budget, unlike others, will fluctuate every year. One year we'll have 1 municipal election, following year there will be 2, and sometimes more if you call for special ones. And that is basically a snapshot of the proposed budget. All of the line items, I believe, are level funded, except for the wages that we just spoke about, 2 unaffiliated positions and UAW clerical. We did eliminate the temporary seasonal help, yes, 51400, and that is because the 2 10-year mandates are now completed.
Okay. Questions for City Clerk, Alderman Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hello.
Sue, how you doing? I know very well that dog licensing season is kind of hectic. I was just curious if you knew roughly the percentage breakdown of how many of those dog license fees you actually get versus having to track down people to pay them. And then in tracking down people to pay them, does that come out of your budget as well? Or does that go to collections or something like that, where that's not something that you have to worry about?
So the latter question is, it comes out of my budget. And this year, with being fully staffed and our software up to date, we have collected 9,097 dogs have been licensed. So that's really successful. Out of we have about 1,900 that are outstanding at this point. Now that's all governed by state law. So June 1st, and we just sent out late notices last week to those individuals saying, please come in for $7.50 if you're neutered or spayed and get licensed, because after June 1st, there's late fees, and state law requires us to come to this board for a civil forfeiture fine, which is $25, $7 for servicing. And then at the beginning of June 1st of each year, you get $1 late fee, again, all by state fees, state law, that's a mandate. So we telephone people in our downtime. We do postcards, which is cheaper than the postage, put it on our website, and we try to reach people cost effectively. And we're looking at a robocall, actually, to start those as well, to reach as many people as possible and get our dogs licensed.
I have 2 follow-up questions, actually. I noticed that you said the wages temporary seasonal went out, but would that then kick back in during elections, or are you looking to hire more full-time, full-term people when the election rolls around?
So the wages temporary and seasonal were in staff, and we are not. But wages elections, we will staff more at the polls for voter registrars, ballot inspectors. That will be increased. State elections and how many we staff are based on state law when we get up to the state level, and municipal ones are by our NROs on our ballot elections. They're don't have as much turnout and we don't man as many. But you will see over time increase in the employees in our office.
Right, okay. And then the final question I have is, I know for a while, you did not have all the people that you needed in your office, and that was fun. Are you currently fully staffed, in your opinion, in the clerk's office?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions for the city clerk? Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yep.
Have a good evening.
Okay.
Thanks, Sue.
Yeah. So the next is emergency preparedness, the appropriations on page 132. 132. And Tara is on Zoom.
Good evening, everybody. So for the most part, the budget has stayed the same. Biggest changes are actually a reduction in the salary, which reflects the elimination of the director position after Justin left. After he left, I've been working with the mayor's office to reevaluate the workload of the office and what other departments and agencies are doing on the state and federal level. So we've been monitoring the workload and reviewing with the mayor's office monthly. The state does a lot of the technical assistance stuff that this office used to do, like emergency plans. And so I've mostly been focusing on the fundamentals of emergency management. So I've been able to keep up with that workload, which does bring me into the addition to the budget, which is the other contracted services. Like I said, for the most part, I've been able to keep up with this workload, but I would like to be able to bring on, expand and contract the department as did for, when we have bigger projects, I might need more help, and then we go back to the day-to-day and I don't need much help. So that is pretty much the summary, short and sweet.
Okay. Alderman Kathy?
Not that I don't love a reduction in a budget, but I'm curious why the benefits are so low. They went all the way down to $345, which seems really low.
So personally, I am still in school and I'm still eligible for my parents' insurance. So I don't take as many benefits as we previously had.
Thank you.
Is it cost savings?
Right, yeah. I just curious. It seemed out of place. I was like, whoa.
Any other questions? Alderman Jettie?
Yeah, thank you. So, do I understand that we've decided we don't need a director of emergency management? Is that what you're saying?
Probably an unfair question to ask her. I'd ask Mr. Griffin maybe.
Okay, I don't mean to ask you an unfair question, but you're here representing the department. So if it's unfair, I'll refer it to someone else, but.
Yeah, I've been working with the mayor over the past few months and, like I said, reviewing the workload and, yes. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, I've been working with the mayor and this was something that I noticed when I got my budget. It wasn't fully finalized, but I had been functioning well, and the workload had been manageable over the past few months. So that was a decision that was made.
Alderman O'Brien?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Jettie, I'm going to attempt to answer. In a way, the casual observer will probably say we have a fire chief and we have a police chief. And just currently, up at the State House, it was changed to expand in the case of an emergency, to include first responders, public works employees. Because when you look at a blizzard, it comes down to the guy in the plow truck to clear the way for fire apparatus and everything else. So it's an expansion. It's a brand-new field. It's been evolving over the last several years. But the thing is to keep in mind, you can have all the great tactics in the world. When I was a deputy fire chief, I had a lot of great ideas. But if I didn't have the logistics behind me, that's when the failure occurs. And part of the emergency preparedness is to take care and prepare for the logistics, such as like what happens if we do hit a blizzard or hurricane or other type of abnormal events. You got to keep in mind in 1936, I think the National River overflowed its banks, and there's been flooding in this city, particularly the good people at Walden Pond. It may not affect you, but I think they could tell you how they got flooded out a couple of years ago, to which the emergency preparedness provided the logistical backup. So it is very much a key, with it.
Yeah. I asked a similar question, and the response I got was Tara's doing a great job. Any other questions? Thank you, Tara. Yep. All right, and last but not least, citywide communications. No stranger to the Aldermanic Chamber.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Bill Mansfield, Radio Systems Manager for the city. And you want to proceed with?
Yeah, before that, you might just want to mention where you fall and where you report and where you reside as far as your position in the city.
My home away from home?
Yeah.
So, I'm the Radio Systems Manager. I'm housed at the police department. That is where the main radio system is, main brains of the radio system. I pretty much report to the fire chief, the police chief, and the mayor, depending on what the incident is or what the issue is. I am evaluated by the police chief. He gives me my annual evaluations. I prepare, part of the radio communications is we have over 1,500 radios in the city. These radios are in DPW trucks, buses, police cars, portable radios that are utilized by every entity within the city, police, fire, every DPW worker, health department, transit, schools. So we're responsible for all of the radio equipment itself, as well as the infrastructure. There are 5 sites within the city that we maintain. When I say that we maintain them, we have HVAC, we have generators, we have we have to do our own plowing of the sites in the wintertime. So basically, we're soup to nuts. There are 2 of us in the division. There were 2.2 last year. I'm sorry, there was actually 2 full-time employees last year. Right now, there's a part-time employee with a .80 FTE, and the other one is a full-time employee. Over this past year, we had an employee retire, and the communications division was very lucky to basically enlist and steal the IT manager from the police department. So now he is on my staff and has been a considerable help since the majority of our equipment is all IT based today. So the budget itself, it has gone up a little bit. The reasons for this are because of costs. Everything from our maintenance contracts to our equipment has gone up at least 10%. And that pretty much that's what it's come down to, is everything has gone up. The prices have gone up and everything. And that's why the increases this year. So I'm not sure if you want me to go on line items or where they are, but if you have any specific questions, that'd be great.
Are there any, so I guess, are there any lines that are gone up significantly, others gone down significantly? That would be one thing to cover.
There's nothing that's really gone up or gone down significantly. Almost every line item has gone up somewhat. The payroll has gone down a bit because of the fact that we don't have we had a shared part-time employee last year who was a .20 FTE. And he's now our full-time employee, so we absorbed him, and it has been, like I said, has been very beneficial. So that .20, it did go down a little bit from that on the wages. One thing that did go up, and I'll bring it forward, is under line item 51700, it has stipends. It's not really a stipend. As salaried employees, we're not eligible for overtime. Although in the contract, we are eligible for a stipend if we are called back into work on vacation, off of vacation, holidays, weekends, and such things like that. So that's what that line item is. It was added this year because of the fact that of the callback that we had last year. Another is the maintenance, equipment maintenance. The large portion of that, for those of you who don't know, our system is every 2 years we get a infrastructure upgrade to our radio system, and that keeps us current with what is keeps the current radio system current, so that we don't fall into the trap what we did several years ago, where we had to do what I would call a forklift upgrade. In other words, we had to replace everything from soup to nuts. So this keeps us maintained every 2 years. There's a team from Motorola that comes in. There's 7 of them, as well as the 2 city employees, and we work for almost a month to make this infrastructure upgrade happen. So,
Questions? Alderman Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not that I find it to be outrageous, but the actual for stipends right now is $9,700, but you're budgeted for 6. Is there a specific reason why?
so last year, the employee that retired was out for approximately 8 months. It was myself and the part-time employee that was trying to fill in, and that's why it was considerably more.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. Regarding the people that work in this department, I'm just going back to 2022 budget, and I see the radio systems manager, that matches out. But then this year you have an assistant. Can you just revisit the employees in the department again? I know you explained it. Somebody retired, they're gone, you replace them with somebody else. Could you please just revisit that?
So in FY 2022, there was a full-time employee.
Yes, sir.
Then there was also a .20 employee that was shared with the police department. He was considered to be in that full-time line item last year because he was not part-time. He's a full-time employee. He was 80% on the police side and 20% with us. So they rolled that .20 into the full-time line item. I am the part-time employee.
I think I see that. Okay. Okay.
So, just for historical background, a couple of years ago, Bill was the only person doing all this work on the radios. And the Board of Aldermen determined that if you ever get hit by a bus, we were up the creek without a paddle. That's why we had additional staff for him, so that we wouldn't lose our entire communication system. So, and the other thing is, could you just explain like this site, for instance, at Kessler Farm, and how that works and has all kinds of backups to make sure we're always...
So each of the, so when I say we're responsible for 5 sites, 3 of the sites are actual infrastructure sites where we have antennas, we have towers, we have building facilities there. They're concrete buildings at those 3 sites. There's HVAC there. There is propane generators at each of these sites for backup in case we lose power here within the city. We're responsible for maintaining those buildings and making sure that our radio communication stays up 24/7, 365. The other two sites that I'm speaking of are police and fire dispatch. We have infrastructure equipment in those facilities. We have the dispatches, the 3 consoles at fire, there's three consoles at police. There's also radio rooms within those facilities. They have battery backup for UPSs that we're responsible for, and then the buildings have their own generators that are the responsibility of each department. So we have at each of the sites, the 3 sites where the infrastructure is, not only do we have generators, but we have approximately a week and a half of battery power out at those sites, just in case it's just redundancy upon redundancy to make sure we don't lose communications.
Yeah. A year and a half ago, you almost had a stroke when I told them they were tearing down the tower at Kessler Farm, and the antennas were on top of it.
Yes,
Had to
and we
put
had to
up a new tower.
We had to quickly get a tower up there, so.
Yeah.
And
All right,
it's-
any other questions for Mr. Mansfield? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, Alderman O'Brien, I'll entertain a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to table R-22-035.
All right, the motion is to table R-22-035. Any discussion? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. I see Department of Energy Management on here. We're gonna do that another night.
That was emergency preparedness.
That was emergency preparedness. That was terror.
I see under department name, I see Mayor's Office, Board of Aldermen, Legal Department, City Clerk's Office, Department of Energy Management, and Citywide Communications.
If you look at the numbers for emergency preparedness and emergency management are exactly the same. They're just labeled differently.
Could you repeat that, please?
The numbers, 156, if you look, emergency management is 156, and emergency preparedness is 156. It's just whoever wrote the budget or put the wrong word, so it's the same thing.
Oh, so that's
It's just a
over there.
typo or.
Okay, all right.
All right, any other discussion? Not all in favor, signify, oh, gotta take it by Zoom.
Roll call.
Roll call. That would be you. Roll call. Thought we were
My
all-
fault, getting COVID, yes, we have to do roll call.
I forgot about Kelly not here. Okay. Alderman at large, Laurie Wilshire.
Yes.
Alderman John Sullivan.
Yes.
Alderman at large, Shoshana Kelly.
Yes.
Alderman Ernest Jettie.
Yes.
Alderman John Cathy.
Yes.
Alderman at large, Michael O'Brien votes yes. And Alderman Richard Dowd.
Yes. All
Motion
right.
passes.
R-22-035 is tabled. New business ordinances,
There are none.
we have nothing that was tabled in committee. General discussion. But I'm gonna have public comment. I guess we have public comment first, and then we'll have general discussion. Does anyone like to be heard in public comment? Name and address for the record.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I take exception to what I heard tonight coming out of the mayor. I have a real concern with this position that he said for the right to know paralegal. I'm equally concerned that Attorney Bolton would say, I knew nothing about this position. Why would we have a right to know coordinator in the legal office and a right to know paralegal under administrative services to handle right to knows? When you got right to knows in DPW, when you got right to knows in the building department, when you've got all these other divisions that have them, finance, John Griffin gets a bunch of them from a citizen. Why would you put that under Ms. Kleiner? I am deeply concerned that Ms. Kleiner would have any responsibility for anyone legal. I don't think she's qualified to do that. I see that as an enormous risk. I came out of court with her and I found her to be the most non-credible person in that courtroom. Please do not make this mistake again. Do not do that. Also, the mayor said we've had 1,200 right to know since 2018, 19, 20, 21, and 22. Let's look at 22. And let me dispel the lies that this mayor put out. One of the reasons the right to knows have to be filed is when I come into City Hall and ask for information that I could always get, they say, oh, Lori, go home and write a right to know. Well, guess what? I put my foot down on that, and I'm not doing it anymore. I'm coming in and getting the information that's available right away and taking it. I'm not writing a right to know so they can write back to me. It's absurd. And when the mayor says that we have people who don't want to be here because they don't want to be dealing with right to knows, they don't want to deal with Miss Kleiner's crap on how to handle them. And they're walking out because of her. Are you looking into that? Is anyone researching what she's doing? And let me say this, when the mayor says the chief didn't want to do it, Ms. Kleiner, Amanda Mazerow testified on the stand that my right to know requests to assess help to get printed property record cards were ignored. And when I said to her, did you answer my request just to send me a printed card? She said, no. I said, why? Ms. Kleiner told me not to. What did you do with them? I had to send them to Ms. Kleiner and Rick Vincent. And then Rick Vincent was told to go do the clerical work and get the card, print it, and send it to me, which he wasn't following up on because he's a chief making $125,000 who couldn't do that work. I wrote an email to him and said, why are you doing this?
30 seconds.
It's clerk work, it's settlements. I had to go to Mr. Vincent to get settlement agreements. They were always in the minutes. They sealed them. I couldn't get them any longer. This is crap. This is ridiculous. This mayor needs to go. He's fabricating stories and building it into the budget. Get rid of him and don't do this with our budget. And there's nothing comical about it, Mr. O'Brien. It's a sad story. You're birds of a feather.
Excuse me, miss.
I'm done.
Thank you.
All right, general discussion. No? All right, remarks by Alderman. Alderman O'Brien?
Yes, as clerk, as you know, I have to record and everything, and that's to record the time, and before I can end it, somebody accused of something else. There seems to be a lot of accusations going on, and unfortunately, all I was trying to do is my particular job in timing the events. And I do not appreciate anybody that interferes with a public official. And I think as we heard with the diatribe, we heard some complete slamming of people who we pay, that we are, as aldermen, supposed to defend. Now, anybody can do anything wrong. When we do something wrong, yes, we have the opportunity to correct it. But just to go through a diatribe of slamming people because it seems to be convenient seems most unfortunate. I'm sorry for your soul, but I appreciate the employees who work for this particular city. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other remarks by Alderman? Seeing none, motion, Alderman O'Brien?
Yes, I'd like to motion to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. We need to have a roll call.
Yes, let's see. Alderman Elijah Laurie Wilshire.
Yes.
Alderman Derek Tebow.
Sure.
No, you're not.
Why not, I guess?
I'm reading, you're on this one, you're not on this one. Alderman John Sullivan?
Hi.
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 Alderwoman at large Shoshana Kelly?
Hi.
Yes, okay, I'll take that as a yay. Alderman Ernest Jettie?
Yes.
Alderman John Cathy?
Yes.
Alderman Michael O'Brien votes yes. Alderman Richard Dow?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Motion carries. We're adjourned at 8:48 PM.